2 days post-game, Swoop standouts. I've rewatched the game. Lots to talk about. Let's get into it. So it was actually pretty hard picking a top five because the game was, like we keep saying, the game was just played in two different halves, and it was just two games in two halves. Some players played well in that first half. Some players played well in that second half who didn't really play well in that first half. Some players had a consistent game. So these votes are going to be up and down every which way. So that's why I want to hear who you all voted for down below. We'll talk about some of the guys that I was a little bit disappointed with and some of the honorable mentions as well. But let's get into it. So starting off with my fifth best player, I gave this to Darcy Moore. Now, I thought Darcy Moore had a fantastic first half. Didn't have a lot to do in the second half because, it was mainly played in Collingwood's forward half. So our defenders weren't really in the mix until, obviously they kick a couple of really late goals and a couple in the third. But it was mainly that first half where Darcy Moore just really stood out to me, and he was that leader that we know that he is. And whenever, he took that really nice contested pack mark and he did a couple of nice things and stuff. And I always just go back to when people were saying, drop him, he should give up the captaincy midway through the season. Like, this guy is a natural born leader. His dad did it. He's a Collingwood premiership captain as well. And I just thought he really led by example, albeit, yes, we didn't kick a goal, and yes, we were getting goals piled on against us, but I put that down to the Suns, who were just on an absolute roll, and, the forwards were just piling on the pressure to the next guy when they missed, right? So I gave Darcy Moore my fifth best player of the game. Fourth best player of the game came on in the second half, Scott Pendlebury. Now, Scott Pendlebury came on, had 17 disposals, a tackle, a handful of clearances, and he just changed the game with his footy IQ. That's something that the stats can't show you, that when Scott Pendlebury came on, his IQ was, Einstein level, right? And that's a double-edged sword. You don't want to have to rely on someone like Scott Pendlebury to pull you over the line or try to get you over the line. But then you kind of go the other way and you go, because we've got him, use him, right? Was it a bad choice to have him as sub? Who really knows? Who really knows? But I know we've got a couple of shorter breaks coming up, so that's probably, why he was sub as well, older body, etc., etc. And it just kind of makes you wonder, like, if Jeremy Howe wasn't subbed out, who would have made way for Scott Pendlebury? Probably would have been someone like Sullivan. And then you have Jeremy Howe, and you probably go on and win that game. So we were down a defender, a really good defender, when Scott Pendlebury did come on. But he did change the game, or he helped change the game. I don't think it was all Scott Pendlebury that helped change the game. I don't think he came on and everyone's like, oh, Scott's here, let's do well. I know that was definitely a part of it. But I also think Gold Coast really went back into their shell. They were overthinking how to win the game how to keep us from scoring as opposed to how to go on and win the game, put their foot on our throat. So Scott did have a say, and that's why he's my fourth best player. Now, my third best player that I saw was Lachie Schultz, right? Now, I have Lachie Schultz here. He had 7 tackles, 17 pressure acts, 2 tackles inside forward 50, 8 score involvements, etc., etc. He had an absolutely incredible game on his return. I know statistically, Tom Mitchell, Ned Long did have better games, with regards to pressure acts and tackles, and even Jack Crisp, right? And they all played a significant part. I put Lachie Schultz as my third best player because there was a lot of pressure on him to perform. We know what Tom Mitchell can do. We know what Ned Long can do when they've got the ball. So they were playing their role really well. But with Lachie Schultz, we've been missing that small pressure forward for weeks. No Schultz, no Bobby, no Bo. He comes on, plays a really, really good game, picking up where he left off after 2 hamstrings, a concussion. And he was, instrumental in that second half, especially in that last quarter, was absolutely instrumental. And what he's able to bring to this team, we rely on him now. We rely on him as our pressure forward. And I thought that he was, for me, third best on the ground. Now, top 2, second, Jamie Elliott, 3 goals, 3, nearly won the game off the back of his own boot. That last goal to put us up in front, I was elated. I was absolutely elated. I'm like, of course, it had to be Jamie Elliott again, albeit center clearances and stuff sort of let us down. And you know, we go on and lose that game. But there were a couple of times where he could have maybe, you know, kicked a goal. Like I know there was one who was sort of running, he should have set it up and it went over. It was on the boundary and stuff. Would have been a miracle goal, but you know, they're trying to win the game and they're trying to score goals, and I understand that. But I thought Jamie Elliott had another incredible game. He is so close to kicking 50 goals, and that's the first time we'll have a 50-goal kicker in so long, right? So he's just having an all-Australian year, and, you know, he might not get any Brownlow votes for this. I don't think he will, but I thought it was a really good game for a forward who, six scoring shots, but when we didn't kick a goal in the first half, for him to finish with 3 goals, 3, and nearly win us the game off the back of his own boot, what more can you say about Jamie Elliott? Now, the last guy, number 1, Josh Daicos. You know it was going to be Josh. Now, at the start of the video, I said some players played well in the first half, not well in the second half, well in the second half, not well in the first half. I think Josh Daicos was one of those players. We know, you know, it's much publicized about his last quarter, which was just one of the highest scoring fantasy or Supercoach last quarters in the history of the game. Josh in the middle is a secret weapon. I reckon Collingwood were trying to hide that for a very long time. What I love and what I haven't seen a lot of media and stuff talk about, I've seen a couple of Collingwood supporters say it, and because we're so in tune with the team, but we can afford to have Josh in the middle because we've got a 2-time All-Australian halfback in Dan Houston that can play Josh's role that hasn't been playing that role because Josh has been playing that role, right? If you put Josh into the middle, put Dan Houston into the position that he was playing when he was at Port Adelaide, which is pretty much in par to the Josh Daicos halfback role now, you're absolutely laughing. That's why we bring in a player like Dan Houston. That's why we're bringing in Harry Perryman. That's why we're paying for these guys to play those roles. And yes, Dan Houston has been down a little bit because he's not playing his natural role. He's had to do roles that we need him to do in the team. But bring in Josh into the middle. Dan Houston moves up to that attacking halfback role. Perryman plays Dan Houston's role. We get Frampton back, and you're absolutely laughing. And I think that was something that was in our back, the ace up your sleeve, right? The ace up your sleeve when you're playing poker. I think that's what we were doing. We didn't want to show it too hard. We had to, and he nearly won us the game. And Josh, you got to think that Josh is an All-Australian. He won a best and fairest in our premiership year, not playing off half-back, playing in the middle and on the wing and stuff like that. So we know how good of a midfielder he can be. Is this something that we see going forward, or is it just a pinch hitting in the midfield? Because if one Daicos doesn't get you, another Daicos will. I do want to give a couple of shouts. I thought Tim Membry had another incredible game as our forward who kicked our first goal in the third quarter. He finished with 2. I thought he did super well. Ned Long, for the most part, I know he missed that goal at the end, but the pressure that he brings, and Tom Mitchell as well with low game time. I think he had about 75% game time. I still think Ned Long and Tom Mitchell can work in the same team, and they can work in tandem. But just, things have to change a little bit. Once you get Bo McCreary back into the middle to pinch it as that really fast-paced midfielder, or keep Josh in the middle, that's where it works out a little bit more. I also think Braden Maynard had a pretty good game, and you got to give it to our defenders who I know Gold Coast really came hard in especially that first half, and they were kicking goals where we probably were a little bit too lethargic with the ball, and I said all this in my preview, and I won't bore you too much about that. You can just go watch the review of the game. But I thought the defenders, for the most part, did do as much as they could. I reckon it was our mids that were sort of letting us down and letting Gold Coast go out. And when you're under fire as a defender, you are going to leak some goals, albeit you don't want to leak that many goals and not score your own goals. But I thought in the second half they really tightened it all up. Now, the guys that I think didn't impress me too much, I talked about it on the review. I thought Will Hoskin-Elliott, when Jeremy Howe went down, he had to go into the back line. I thought he wasn't the Will Hoskin-Elliott that we know and love. I know he had to play a different role, and I accept that, and that's fair enough. I just think that he could have been just a little bit, I don't know, just there was just something about his game that just wasn't resonating with me. It's probably one of his worst games that he's played for the Pies, definitely in recent years. There were a couple of people that just were down just in general. I think Sullivan, Rowan Steele in his second game, I thought he had really nice, couple of good entries inside 50. He did a couple of nice things. Very low game time. He had about 69% game time, so very low game time. But it was good to sort of see him out there again. Probably one of those guys that make way when Lipinski comes back and stuff like that. But I'm glad we gave him another opportunity. I thought Mason Cox, I should have said this in the shout-outs. This is not a detriment. I thought Mason Cox did really, really, really well for his first game really back. I thought that was his best game, definitely this year, his best game. Probably his best game that he's played for the Pies in quite a while, taking contested marks. I know he didn't kick any goals and wasn't a real big presence up forward, but around the ground, taking the hit-outs, we know how good of a tap ruckman he can be. I think he did pretty soundly. But they're my standouts and, a couple of the how's it goings. Let me know your thoughts down below. What changes are you making to next week's game against the Fremantle, who have just come out and beaten Hawthorn? Let me know your thoughts down below. Until then, like, comment, subscribe, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your pets, and until next time, double shackers. I'll swoop you later.
Go!